The message came at 6:42 a.m. No greeting, no punctuation, no trace of warmth. Just 3 cold words on my lock screen. Mortgages due. I stared at the screen for a long moment, my fingers still curled around my coffee mug, watching the steam fade as if it too had lost its purpose. I didn't reply right away. I didn't ask how they were. I didn't ask if something had happened. Instead, I typed 5 words. My name is Samantha Ruiz. Then I turned off my phone and set it face down on the kitchen counter. And just like that, it was done. Not the mortgage, not the money, but the part of me that still clung to the idea that I mattered to them, that I was seen, that I was more than just the daughter who paid their bills while her brother played helpless. That morning, something broke. Quietly, like glass under your shoe. You don't hear the snap. You just notice the sharpness later. 3 months earlier, I had been at their house, the same house I had helped pay for over the last 5 years. At first, it was just the mortgage, then groceries, then repairs. When the roof leaked, I was the one who called the contractor. When Mom's car battery died, I drove across town on my lunch break to fix it. I never said no. Not once. Meanwhile, my younger brother Lucas, well, Lucas didn't say anything at all. He didn't work. He didn't help. He didn't contribute a single dime. And yet, somehow he was the favorite, the golden boy, the one they always defended with a shrug and a soft sigh. He's just figuring things out. He's 28. That day at their house, I was helping Dad organize paperwork for their taxes. As usual, he didn't understand half of what he was signing. He handed me a folder and said, "Just scan whatever looks important." I didn't think much of it. I'd done this a dozen times before. But when I opened the folder, something caught my eye, a thick envelope labeled in clean, bold font, estate plan and last will and testament. I hesitated, not because I was snooping, but because after everything I'd done, the money, the time, the energy, part of me wondered how they saw me when it really counted. So I opened it, and there it was, the house, the savings, the stocks, everything, all of it going to Lucas. Not a single mention of my name, not one word, just a closing line. We love both our children equally. I sat there frozen, the document still trembling in my hands. My name wasn't missing because they forgot me. It was missing because they never saw me. Not really, not ever. The worst part wasn't what the will said. It was how unsurprised I felt reading it. Like my body already knew long before my eyes caught the words. Like every moment of quiet dismissal, every time they brushed off my exhaustion with, "Well, that's what grown-ups do," had been leading to this, the final confirmation that I was never the one they were planning for. I kept reading, even though each sentence hit harder than the last. The house was to be transferred directly to Lucas. Not sold, not split, transferred, as if it already belonged to him. The savings accounts, every cent, were listed under his name. There was even a clause about the antique furniture set in the living room, the one I had paid to restore after termites ruined it last summer, to Lucas Ruiz for his future family home. My hands were shaking now, not with rage, not yet. It was something colder, numbness, the kind that creeps in when something you've always suspected finally becomes undeniable. I stared at my parents' signatures at the bottom of the page. Legal, final, smiling in ink. I must have been sitting there longer than I realized because Dad returned from the kitchen and asked, "Sam, what's taking so long?" I didn't hide the will. I didn't tuck it back into the folder like a secret. I held it up and looked him dead in the eye. "So this is how it is," I said. My voice didn't tremble. It was too calm, too controlled. "Everything goes to Lucas? After everything I've done for you." Dad's face lost a shade. He blinked, then let out a long, tired sigh, the kind of sigh he used to make when I asked too many questions as a kid. "It's not what you think." I nearly laughed. "Really? Because it seems pretty damn clear. I've been paying your mortgage, handling repairs, buying groceries, and Lucas has been doing what exactly?" He looked down, like maybe if he avoided my gaze long enough, I'd let it go. But I didn't. I called out, "Mom." She appeared from the hallway, her expression instantly tensing when she saw what I was holding. At least she had the decency to look guilty. That lasted 2 seconds. "Samantha," she said softly, stepping closer like I was about to cry. "You don't need the inheritance. You have a good job. You're responsible. Lucas, he struggles." That word, struggles, as if it were a virtue. "You just want to make sure he's taken care of," I repeated. She nodded, relieved that I understood. I set the will down on the table, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. "Got it. Good to know where we stand." And I walked out. They didn't stop me. Not really. Not even when the front door slammed shut behind me. I didn't go back the next day, or the day after. I didn't call. I didn't text. And for the first time in years, I let the silence grow between us, and I let it stay. I was done pretending. Done waiting for some miracle apology that would never come. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Because families like mine, the ones that thrive on control and guilt, never let go quietly. 2 weeks passed. That was their limit. On a Wednesday morning, while I was prepping for a client meeting at work, my phone buzzed. One text. From Dad. Just 5 words. No punctuation. No emotion. "The property taxes are due." I stared at the message for a long time. Not angry. Not hurt. Just stunned by how little they'd understood. After everything. After reading the will. After seeing me walk out. They still thought I would pay. That I would fold. That guilt was still stronger than self-respect. I typed slowly, deliberately. "I'm sure Lucas will handle it." 5 minutes later, my mom called. I didn't pick up. Let it ring. Then a new text came in. "Samantha, please don't be like this. We need to talk." Oh, now they wanted to talk. Now that the bills were due. Now that the roof over their heads, the one I'd been holding up for years, started to shake without me. I waited an hour before replying. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now live with it." I hit send and set my phone face down on the desk again. I thought that would be the end of it for the day. But then Lucas joined the party. That evening, right as I sat down with a cup of tea, his name lit up on my screen. "Dude, why are you being such a drama queen? It's not a big deal. Just help them like always." I stared at his words, not sure whether to laugh or scream. "Not a big deal?" I typed back, "No. I think you've got it covered, since you're the favorite and all." He replied instantly, "Oh my God, are you seriously mad about the will? Grow up, Sam. It's just money." Just money. I closed my eyes, took a breath, then sent, then used some of that money to pay for the mortgage. Silence. Then, 10 minutes later, Mom again. "We're your parents. Family takes care of each other. We did so much for you growing up, and now you're just abandoning us." I nearly dropped my phone. Abandoning them? I had spent years making sure they never struggled, all while they praised Lucas for doing absolutely nothing. And now, when I finally stopped letting them bleed me dry, I was the selfish one. I answered simply, "You made it clear I wasn't part of the family when you left me out of the will. Now Lucas can take care of you." I could almost hear her gasp through the screen. That night, I turned off my phone. I didn't want to see any more of their messages. The guilt, the begging, the entitlement, it all blended into one exhausting echo of a role I no longer played. I wasn't their fixer anymore. I wasn't their silent sponsor. I wasn't the invisible daughter who held the roof up while Lucas was praised for breathing. The next morning, I opened my banking app out of habit. That's when I saw it, a money request. From Mom. $3,500. No message. No explanation. Just a transaction. Cold. Calculated. Shameless. It was the exact amount I used to send monthly. The number hadn't even changed. They hadn't bothered to ask. They just assumed I'd cave. That I'd quietly pay like always. That nothing had changed except everything had. I hit decline. 5 minutes later, the phone rang. I didn't need to check the name. I let it go to voicemail. Then another text came through. Samantha, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline it? I stared at the screen, jaw clenched, took a deep breath, typed back, because it's not my responsibility. Try Lucas. Another call. Declined. Then one more message. We're going to lose the house if you don't help us. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. The dramatics were so predictable, so perfectly rehearsed. I could have written the script myself. They weren't about to lose the house. Not really. They had savings, investments, retirement plans. But dipping into those would mean losing comfort, and they'd rather risk guilt-tripping me into bailing them out than touch their own cushion. I answered, maybe you should have thought about that before deciding I didn't matter. It didn't take long. Dad texted next. You really going to let your parents become homeless? I rolled my eyes. The manipulation was thick now. They weren't just poking at guilt. They were drowning in it, hoping I'd slip too. I didn't even argue. I just typed no. I'm done. Then turned off my phone again. I expected silence. Maybe another day or two of passive-aggressive texts. I did not expect what came next. It was a Friday afternoon. I was halfway through a Zoom call with my team when the front desk of my apartment building called me directly. Ms. Ruiz, your parents are here. They say it's an emergency, that you won't answer your phone. My stomach dropped. They're here. The receptionist hesitated. Yes, and they're being a little pushy. I closed my eyes and pressed my fingers against my temple. Please don't let them up, I said. I'm not expecting anyone. But I knew they weren't leaving. They didn't leave. 5 minutes after I hung up with the front desk, my phone lit up again, Mom. I didn't answer. Then the texts started pouring in. We're downstairs. Open the door. We need to talk. We're not leaving until you speak to us. No apologies. No acknowledgments. Just more demands. I stood by my kitchen window and looked down into the parking lot. There they were, both my parents standing side by side, arms folded like this was some kind of intervention. And behind them, leaning against the car with all the enthusiasm of a bored teenager, was Lucas. Of course, the guest of honor. I felt my blood begin to simmer. They hadn't come to talk. They had come to corner me. The same way they always did, show up unannounced, throw guilt like confetti and hope I'd surrender to their script. But not this time. I grabbed my keys and stormed downstairs, my heels clicking against the tile like gunshots. I wasn't scared. I was furious. The moment I stepped outside, Mom gasped like she hadn't seen me in years. Samantha, she cried, finally. We need to talk. I didn't move. I leaned against the frame of the door, arms crossed. No, you need to leave. She blinked, as if she hadn't understood. Excuse me. You heard me, I said. You don't get to just show up at my apartment and demand money. That's insane. Dad scoffed. You're really going to let us lose the house over a petty grudge? I let out a dry laugh. A petty grudge? You mean the one where I paid your bills for years while you planned to leave everything to Lucas? That grudge. Mom clutched her chest like I'd slapped her. Samantha, that's not fair. We only did what we thought was best for the family. I tilted my head. Best for the family? No. Best for Lucas. Just say it. The silence that followed was long, heavy, the kind that settles in your bones. Lucas, who hadn't said a word until now, finally spoke. Look, I didn't ask for any of this. I turned to him. My voice was steady, but it cut like a blade. No, you just sat back and took everything that was handed to you. You're 28, Lucas. Get a job. His cheeks flushed red. What the hell, Sam? I stepped closer. You want to be the man of the house? Start acting like one. You want the inheritance? Start paying their damn bills. He looked away, suddenly fascinated by a crack in the pavement. Mom tried again, softer now. He's your brother. I nodded. Yep. and I've supported him more than either of you ever have. Dad's voice hardened. You're being selfish. I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound, coming from the man who erased me from his will. That's rich. And then I said what I came to say. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it. I didn't go back upstairs right away. I walked around the block. Twice. Let the anger burn off in the breeze. When I returned home, the silence felt different. Not empty, not lonely, but clean, like something toxic had been aired out for good. My phone kept buzzing all night, but I didn't check it. I wasn't ready. Not until the next morning, when I opened Facebook just to scroll mindlessly and clear my head. And there it was. My mother's post. A sepia-toned photo of our family from a decade ago, captioned in aching italics. We did everything for our children. Some forget, but we remember what family truly means. The comments poured in, sympathy from her friends, passive-aggressive encouragement from her church group, even a few people I hadn't heard from in years. One wrote, "So sorry you're going through this. Some kids just lose their way." I kept scrolling. Dad had posted too. Family takes care of each other, especially in hard times. We taught our children that. Shame when lessons are forgotten. He tagged me in it, publicly, but the final blow came from Lucas. A full paragraph, drenched in fake sincerity. Some people think money is more important than love. They forget who changed their diapers, who stayed up with them when they were sick. I would do anything for our parents. Not everyone can say the same. I dropped my phone onto the couch and just sat there, stunned. Not because they were twisting the truth, but because I'd seen it coming. They weren't just trying to guilt me now. They were building a narrative, one where I was the ungrateful villain, one where I had abandoned them. And for a moment, just one, I considered staying quiet, letting it pass, letting people believe what they wanted. But then I thought of every bill I had paid, every night I had stayed up crunching my own numbers, so they wouldn't have to. Every sacrifice I had made while they praised Lucas for simply existing. No, I wasn't going to let them rewrite the story while I sat in the background. So I opened my own Facebook, the one I rarely used, and I typed, "I've stayed silent out of respect, but now I need to tell the truth. For years, I supported my parents financially, not because they asked, but because I loved them. I paid their mortgage, their bills, their repairs. I helped even when I couldn't afford to. Meanwhile, my brother contributed nothing. And yet, when I saw their will, I learned they had left everything to him. Not a cent to me, not a mention, just a statement that they loved us equally. So no, I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm finally stepping out of the role I was forced into. I'm choosing myself, and I won't apologize for that." I hit post, and for the first time, I felt free. The post didn't take long to gain traction. By noon, dozens of comments had poured in, not just from strangers, but from people who had known my family for years. A few cousins messaged me privately, saying they were sorry. Some colleagues shared it and wrote things like, "Proud of you, Sam." One woman I hadn't spoken to since college sent me a simple message, "Thank you. I needed to hear this today." But just as I expected, the backlash came fast. Lucas messaged me first. No greeting, no hesitation, just, "You're a traitor. How dare you air family business like that? You have no respect." I didn't respond. He didn't deserve one. A few minutes later, Dad called. I didn't answer. The voicemail was loud, furious, almost theatrical. "You've ruined everything, Samantha. You'll regret this. You'll regret cutting us off." But I didn't. Not for a second. That evening, I blocked their numbers. One by one. I deleted Lucas's messages. Then I made myself dinner for the first time in weeks, without wondering if my money should have gone somewhere else. I watched a show without checking my phone. I fell asleep without guilt. And the next morning, when I woke up to silence, it felt like peace. Until my work phone buzzed. A message from a mutual acquaintance. "Hey, just saw your dad's post on Nextdoor. You okay? Next door. Of course. They'd taken the drama neighborhood wide. I opened the app and saw it. Another long, winding post from Dad, written in his best concerned citizen voice. It's hard when your own child turns their back on you. We raised her, loved her, gave her everything. But in our golden years, she chose money over family. He didn't use my name, but everyone knew who he meant. That afternoon, I received a knock at my door. Not from them. From a neighbor. Sweet older woman from down the hall. She handed me a casserole and whispered, "You're doing the right thing, honey. Don't let anyone guilt you back into a prison." I nearly cried, not because of the food, but because someone had seen through the noise and believed me. That night I made one last post. Short, quiet, but final. You raised me to be useful. I raised myself to be free. No hashtags, no tagging, just truth. They could keep spinning their story. Let Lucas inherit the house, the savings, the chaos. Let them post. Let them pout. Let them weaponize their version of family. I was done playing the villain in their fantasy. I wasn't the problem. I was just the one who stopped pretending. Days passed, then a week. My phone stayed quiet. The silence wasn't empty anymore, it was earned. I kept waiting for the guilt to creep in, like it always had before. But it didn't come. No tightness in my chest when I passed a family photo on my shelf. No shame when I opened my fridge and saw that I'd only bought groceries for one. What came instead was clarity. I realized I had spent years confusing obligation with love. I thought being a good daughter meant giving until I had nothing left. That if I just helped one more time, paid one more bill, smoothed one more problem, maybe they'd see me. Maybe they'd thank me. Maybe they'd include me. But they never did, because they never had to. They knew I'd keep showing up. And I did. I showed up with cash, with car repairs, with quiet loyalty. I showed up when Lucas didn't. I showed up even when they lied to my face. And when the will proved exactly where I stood, or rather didn't, I still hesitated. Because some part of me believed that family meant forever. But now, I understand something new. Family isn't who expects you to break yourself for them. Family is who sees you, respects you, stands beside you even when you say no. That understanding didn't come from any apology. It came from their absence, from their silence when the money stopped, from their outrage when the truth came out, from Lucas's entitlement, from Dad's cold manipulation, from Mom's crocodile tears. They didn't lose a daughter. They lost access to my time, to my kindness, to my bank account, to my silence. I didn't abandon them. I just stopped holding them up. I stopped playing the role they'd written for me without my consent. And when they looked confused, when they called me selfish, all they really meant was, "You're not useful anymore." That hurt. It really did. But it also set me free. These days, I'm learning what it feels like to be still, to breathe without bracing, to rest without guilt. I started painting again. I joined a book club. I even took a weekend trip, paid entirely with the money I used to send them every month. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation. Not my parents, not my brother, not the people whispering behind their keyboards. I don't feel guilty. I feel whole. Because finally, I'm living a life where I am no longer a tool for someone else's comfort. I am not a villain. I am not a savior. I am free. A few weeks later, I received a letter. A real one. Handwritten, stamped, folded into a soft pink envelope with my full name written in Mom's cursive. For a moment, I didn't open it. I just stared at it on the counter, half expecting it to whisper old guilt into the room. But eventually, curiosity won. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No dear. No love. Just a message, clipped, careful, and still somehow soaked in judgment. "We don't understand what changed. You used to care about us. We never thought you'd become so cold. You've embarrassed the family, but the door is always open if you're ready to be civil. I folded the letter in half and slid it into a drawer I no longer opened. Because nothing had changed except me. I hadn't become cold. I had become clear. There was no apology, just expectation. No responsibility, just shame wrapped in polite handwriting. They still didn't get it. Maybe they never would. They hadn't lost me when I posted the truth online. They hadn't lost me when I said no at the front door. They hadn't lost me when I blocked the messages or declined the transfer request. They lost me the moment they put ink to paper and decided my name didn't belong in their future. And I was done pretending that decision hadn't meant something. Lucas never reached out again. I saw he got a new job, part-time, something small. Maybe my absence forced a change. Maybe not. Either way, he's no longer my problem. He can pay his own bills. Or not. That's his choice. As for me, I moved to a smaller apartment. I stopped overworking myself to chase a version of success that only ever existed to make them proud. I took a weekend class in photography. I made new friends. I started choosing things just because they made me happy. There are still moments, quiet ones, when I hear a song that reminds me of Sunday mornings in our old kitchen, when I walk by a family laughing together and feel a strange ache in my chest. But it passes, because I know this truth now. You can miss what never truly held you. You can grieve something that never gave you shelter, and you can still be right to walk away. I didn't walk away from love. I walked away from a transaction, disguised as it, and I don't owe them a return. Not for the past, not for the silence, not for the healing. I've already paid, and now I live, not to prove anything, not to get anything, just to be free. I was 12 the first time I saw Samuel Brooks. He'd just moved into the house next door, a small white bungalow with peeling shutters and a fence that leaned ever so slightly to the left. Fairview was the kind of town where front porches were always swept, lawn signs told you who to vote for, and secrets traveled faster than mail. Within hours of his arrival, the rumors began to bloom like mold in humidity. "That's the man from the Givens case," whispered Mrs. Platt, clutching her cardigan like it could protect her from whatever evil she imagined. "The one who went to prison for assaulting a neighbor. A teacher, no less." I had no idea what the Givens case was, but my mom clearly did. That evening, as I reached for my bike helmet to ride before dinner, her hand shot out like a trap, grabbing my wrist so tight it left faint red imprints. "You don't go near that house," she said. Her voice, usually calm, sing-song soft, had dropped to something sharp and foreign. Not the fence, not the sidewalk, nothing. I wanted to ask why. I wanted to understand why someone dangerous would be allowed to live across from the neighborhood park, next to a family with a toddler, in a community where even mailbox height was debated at HOA meetings. But the look in her eyes froze the words in my throat. This wasn't up for discussion. Over the next few days, I noticed things no one else seemed to pay attention to. Mr. Brooks, always Mr. Brooks, to my parents, like naming him gave him weight, never approached anyone. He didn't wave when people jogged past, didn't chat over hedges or accept welcome pies. He spent hours in his backyard tending a garden so meticulous it looked like a catalog spread. Tomatoes staked like soldiers, sunflowers reaching for symmetry, each row labeled with handwritten signs tucked into the soil. He kept his porch light on until 3:45 p.m. every weekday, exactly when my school bus dropped me off. The moment I stepped onto our driveway, it would click off like a switch had been triggered. When the mail-well truck refused to walk packages up to his porch and instead flung them from the curb, nobody blinked. When parents called their kids inside the second he stepped into his yard, they didn't hide the urgency in their voices. It was as if the ground he walked on was contaminated. Some of the neighbors went further. Mrs. Caldwell, whose retirement plan included keeping the neighborhood moral, created a spreadsheet labeled Activity Log Brooks Household and assigned shifts. Every time he left, returned, or got a package, someone would write it down. No one ever knocked on his door to introduce themselves. No one asked questions. They just watched and whispered. The strangest part was how little Mr. Brooks gave them to document. He left every evening at 7:30 sharp, always in the same beat-up navy blue truck, dressed in the same utility jacket embroidered with Fairview salvage. He returned around 6 o'clock in the morning, parked quietly, and disappeared inside. On weekends, he was in the garden. But the moment a child wandered out with sidewalk chalk or a stray basketball bounced too close, he vanished, as if the sound of children sent him back into hiding. At first, I believed the adults. I avoided the sidewalk in front of his house, took the long way to the bus stop, and quickened my step when his porch light was on. But then, small things began to unravel the story, like the day the Jefferson twins tried to follow me home from school, throwing pine cones and yelling names, and he suddenly appeared by his mailbox, pretending to adjust a latch. The boys turned and bolted without a word. Or the time our sprinkler timer malfunctioned, and Mr. Brooks walked over the next day with a replacement battery, saying only, "Your system's corroding. Might want to check the valves." My mom slammed the door after accepting it. "He's trying to ingratiate himself," she muttered. "That's what predators do. They get close before they pounce." But I'd seen something else entirely. He hadn't tried to come inside. He hadn't lingered. He'd handed over the battery and walked away, like someone who wanted to help but knew he'd never be trusted. I started watching from my bedroom window more deliberately, not out of fear, but confusion. The man everyone warned me about didn't act like a monster. He acted like a ghost, quiet, faded, always retreating before someone could shout, and yet always watching, always at the right place, the right time when I needed someone to notice. It was early October when the storm finally broke. The sun had already dipped behind the hills that cradled Fairview, and the air was crisp with the kind of chill that hinted winter wasn't far off. I'd stayed late at the library, lost in a book I wasn't supposed to be reading, To Kill a Mockingbird, ironically. It was getting dark by the time I started the walk home, but I wasn't worried. Not at first. The shortcut behind the mobile station was faster, and I'd taken it dozens of times before. But that night the air felt heavier. I heard the voices before I saw them. Well, if it isn't little Lila," someone sneered. Jake Horn and his two shadows, Ben and Tyler, stepped out from behind the dumpsters like a scene rehearsed too many times. Jake was already a junior despite still being in middle school. Shaved head, leather jacket, and a reputation for cruelty that even teachers pretended not to notice. He shoved me hard against the brick wall. My backpack hit first, then my shoulder. I winced. "You lost?" he asked, fake concern dripping from his voice. "Leave me alone," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. Ben laughed and grabbed my backpack, unzipping it like it belonged to him. My books spilled onto the pavement, one landing in a puddle of something that smelled like rotten oil. "Ah, is this your precious science project?" Tyler teased, lifting a packet of papers and tearing it in half with a slow, deliberate smile. Jake leaned in close enough that I could smell the gum on his breath. "Maybe you need a little lesson in manners." I don't know what I would have done. Probably cried, maybe tried to run. But then, from behind the rusted dumpster, a voice. Problem here. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. But something about the tone, calm, measured, almost bored, made the three boys freeze mid-smirk. Samuel Brooks stepped out of the shadows. His hands were in his coat pockets. He wasn't holding anything. He didn't even look angry. But Jake's face drained of color. "And no problem, sir," he stammered, his voice suddenly cracking. Tyler stepped back, dropping the torn paper. We were just leaving. Samuel didn't say another word. He didn't have to. They scattered like roaches, their sneakers slapping against the pavement as they ran toward the streetlight. For a moment, the alley was silent again. Samuel looked at me, not with pity or disappointment, but something else, a quiet sort of sadness. He crouched slowly, picking up my books one by one, shaking off dirt with care. "Are you hurt?" he asked. I shook my head. The wall had scraped my shoulder, but that didn't matter. "Good," he said softly, handing me the last of my papers. "You should get home. It's not safe here after dark." I wanted to thank him, but the words tangled in my throat. He turned to leave without waiting, heading back toward the dumpster, his shoulders hunched like he carried something heavier than groceries or garbage. When I got home, my mom was just finishing dinner. One look at the tear in my jacket and the dirt on my hands, and she exploded into full-on panic mode. "What happened? Did someone hurt you? Why didn't you call me?" I told her mostly. The library, the boys, how someone had shown up and scared them off. I didn't say who. She sighed, dabbing antiseptic on my palms with too much force to be comforting. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. You're too trusting, Lila. There are dangerous people out there." The irony sat on my tongue like poison. The man she feared most had just saved me from 3 actual threats. He hadn't asked for anything. He hadn't told me to keep a secret. He hadn't even told me his name. He just helped. But the next day, the truth caught up with me. When I got home from school, my mom was waiting in the kitchen, her arms crossed and her jaw tight. "Mrs. Platt saw you talking to him," she said, her voice low and trembling with fury. "Lila, I told you to stay away from that man." "He helped me," I said. "He didn't do anything wrong. Don't you dare defend him." Her voice cracked like a whip, and I flinched, not because she scared me, but because I'd never heard that tone from her before, not even when Dad left. "He is dangerous," she said. "He's a convicted felon. Do you even know what he did?" I didn't. Not really. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I believed her. After that, something inside me shifted. I didn't stop thinking about Samuel Brooks. Not because I was scared of him, but because I couldn't stop wondering why someone everyone called dangerous had risked stepping into that alley for me. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't threatened. He hadn't demanded thanks. He just showed up and left. My mom wouldn't let it go. She called Reverend Moss that evening. And by the next day, I found myself sitting in the church office under the gaze of framed Bible verses and faded family photos. Reverend Moss was a kind man with deep laugh lines and tired eyes. He'd baptized me as a baby and brought us meals after my dad left. But now he looked serious in a way that made me feel like I'd already done something unforgivable. "Lila," he began gently, "people like Mr. Brooks, they don't look like monsters. They don't wear signs. They look helpful. They pretend to be helpful. That's how they gain a child's trust." He pulled out a pamphlet from a drawer, illustrated warnings about predatory behavior, smiling adults, uncomfortable kids, a checklist that felt both obvious and terrifying. They rescue. They protect. Then they offer things, rides, snacks, a safe place. That's how they get close. I swallowed hard, but he didn't offer me anything. He didn't ask me to go with him. He didn't even smile. Reverend Moss nodded slowly. "That's exactly how they work. Patient, calculated. They make you feel safe. Then, when you let your guard down..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. When we got home, Mom sat me down at the table, her expression caught somewhere between fury and fear. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Lila. He has conditions, parole restrictions. He's not even allowed to speak to minors without supervision. If someone reports this, he could go back to prison." "But he didn't do anything wrong," I insisted. "He just helped me." "That's not the point," she snapped. "The point is you disobeyed me, and you interfered with a dangerous man's parole. You could have been hurt, or worse." I nodded. I apologized. I promised to stay away. But I didn't stop watching. I began documenting everything. At first, it was just little things when he left for work, when he came home, how often he watered the sunflowers. But soon patterns emerged. Samuel left every night at 7:30 sharp. He always wore the same navy jacket with Fairview salvage stitched into the chest. His truck had a dented bumper and a cracked taillight. He drove straight down Harper Avenue, toward the industrial part of town. He returned at dawn, always alone. On weekends, he stayed home, worked in the garden, tended to the porch, trimmed the hedges, but the moment any neighborhood child appeared outside, he disappeared like a shadow retreating into light. He never played music, never had visitors, never received phone calls loud enough to hear from outside. It was starting to feel less like hiding guilt and more like avoiding accusation. And yet, something else caught my attention. His garden. It wasn't just in the center of his backyard, like most people would place it. He'd positioned it with surgical precision, angled to face the street, and more importantly, facing the 2-story brick house 2 doors down, Dr. Calvin Monroe's house. Dr. Monroe was the opposite of Samuel Brooks in every way. He was charming, outgoing, smiled too much. He ran community parenting nights and handed out flyers on child psychology. He offered free tutoring on Thursdays. Parents adored him, and Samuel Brooks never stopped watching his house. I tested it one Saturday morning. I brought a book outside and sat on the porch swing, deliberately facing his yard. I wanted to see what he'd do. Sure enough, within 5 minutes, the curtain in his living room shifted. I looked up just in time to catch the edge of his profile as he peered toward the street. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. But when a white van I didn't recognize drove slowly past our block, he moved, slipping from one window to the next to keep it in view. When the van circled back, he stepped outside, leaned against the porch column, and didn't blink until the vehicle turned the corner. Only then did he disappear again. Later that day, I told my mom about the van. Her expression twisted immediately into alarm. What kind of van? What color? Who was driving? I mentioned Samuel had been watching it too. Her face hardened. He was probably the one in that van earlier. Predators case neighborhoods. That's what they do. It didn't make sense. Why would a predator scare himself off? Why would someone spend every Saturday silently tracking the same house across the street while making sure the neighborhood kids stayed out of sight? Why did this all feel backwards? And why, when I thought about what had happened in that alley, did I feel safer with the man everyone feared than I did with the boys everyone ignored? I couldn't stop thinking about Dr. Monroe's house. It always looked perfect. Red shutters, white trim, freshly mowed lawn. Parents came and went like clockwork, dropping off their kids for enrichment sessions or adjustment counseling. On Thursdays, you could see a line of minivans parked along the curb. Jenny Harmon, my friend from school, went there twice a week. She said he gave her snacks and let her play with therapy dogs. Her mom called him a gift to the neighborhood. But every time I saw Dr. Monroe laughing with parents, Samuel Brooks was somewhere nearby, watching. It was becoming hard to ignore. I decided to test one more thing. That Thursday, instead of walking straight home from school, I took the long way, cutting through Riverside Park. It was a known spot for older kids who smoked behind the tennis courts or skipped school under the gazebo. My mom had forbidden me from going there alone, but I needed to know. I barely made it past the swings before I heard them. "Look who wandered into the woods," Jake said, flicking his cigarette to the side. His voice was low and smug. Ben and Tyler flanked him like wolves. I kept walking. "Oh, don't be like that," Tyler called. "We were just wondering if you needed someone to walk you home. You know, since you like dangerous men and all." They started closing in. My palms went cold. I could see the edge of the street through the trees, but it felt miles away. Jake stepped in front of me. "What's the matter, Lila? Scared? Maybe you should scream. I bet that freak next door will come save you again." I turned to run, then froze. Footsteps. Behind me, steady and unmistakable. "There's my neighbor," Samuel said, his tone casual, almost friendly. "Ready to head home, Lila?" Everything stopped. Jake blinked. Ben backed up. Tyler lowered his phone. "We were just talking," Jake muttered. "Sure you were," Samuel said, not raising his voice. "Let's go, Lila." I didn't say a word. I just moved. We walked in silence until we reached the sidewalk out of sight of the park. Then he stopped. "That was reckless," he said quietly. "You put yourself in danger to see if I'd show up." I stared at him. "How did you know I was there?" He looked straight ahead. "I didn't. I was walking to the store and heard your voice. Recognized it." "You said I could ask," I blurted. He paused. "Yes, I did. Why does everyone say you hurt a kid?" He didn't answer right away. The street was silent. A dog barked in the distance. A lawn sprinkler clicked to life down the block. Then he said, "Because I did hurt someone, but not the way they think." Before I could ask what that meant, my mother's voice rang out from our porch. "Lila Marie Raymond, get away from that fence now." She stood there, phone in hand, face pale with fury. I was just inside, now. I followed her in, heart thudding. That evening, she sat me down like I was about to be sentenced. "I've called Reverend Moss. He's calling the sheriff's office. What you did was dangerous, not just for you, but for him. He's not allowed to talk to you. You could send him back to prison." "But he didn't. This is not up for debate, Lila," she snapped, and her voice cracked. Not from anger, but something closer to fear. "You're a child. He's a convicted felon, and you have no idea what these men are capable of. Do you understand me?" I didn't answer, because no, I didn't understand. If Samuel was a predator, why did he go out of his way to avoid kids? Why did he flinch every time one came near? Why did he spend so much time watching, not them, but Dr. Monroe? If he was grooming me, why didn't he ever try to get close? Why did he seem so tired all the time, like he'd been holding up the sky and no one else even noticed? That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. And that's when I heard it, shouting. I scrambled to my window and pulled the curtain just enough to see. 3 men stood in Samuel's front yard, shadows in the porch light. They were yelling, their bodies tense. "We know what you did," one shouted, shoving him backward. "Kids aren't safe with you here," another barked. Samuel didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't run. "We should take care of this now," the third man growled, "before he hurts anyone else." I wanted to scream, to do something, but I couldn't move. Samuel looked up, straight at my window. Our eyes met, and for the first time, I saw it. Not guilt, not fear, just exhaustion. The kind of weariness that comes from being hated for something you didn't do, and not having the strength to fight it anymore. "I've never hurt a child," he said, his voice low but steady. "I never would." They didn't believe him. But somehow, I did. The next morning, our mailbox had something taped to it. A plain white envelope. No name. No stamp. Just 2 sentences written in neat, deliberate handwriting. Fairview Tribune, March 18th, 2019. Check the archives. The real story is there. I stared at the note for a long time before slipping it into my backpack. That afternoon, while Mom was busy in the laundry room and the house smelled of detergent and wet cotton, I snuck out. I rode my bike to the downtown public library, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Mr. Green, the reference librarian, raised a gray eyebrow when I asked for help with the microfilm machine. "School project," he asked. "Kind of elite." He guided me to an old, humming machine in the back corner and left me alone. I scrolled through articles, fingers trembling on the dial, until I found it. March 18th, 2019, page 3. Local man sentenced for assault on registered sex offender. My breath caught in my chest. The man was Samuel Brooks. The victim, Brian Givens, had been a respected member of his old neighborhood. Sunday school teacher, volunteer tutor, former camp counselor. The article was vague. It said Samuel had reported Givens multiple times, raising concerns about disturbing patterns involving children. But when nothing was done, Samuel confronted him directly. The fight left Givens hospitalized. 3 broken ribs, a shattered wrist, and a concussion. Samuel was arrested, charged with felony assault, and sentenced to 3 years in prison. I kept reading. Buried beneath the fold was a quote from Detective Marla Kingsley. While Mr. Brooks' actions were unlawful, his persistence likely prevented further victimization. Several minors have since come forward with allegations against Mr. Givens. I clicked through the database. There were follow-up articles. 17 children. 17. They'd been attending Givens' reading club and mentorship program. For years, he'd used his position to isolate and abuse them. Samuel had seen it. He'd reported it. He'd begged authorities to investigate. When no one listened, he acted, and they sent him to prison. My chest tightened as I printed every article I could find. It wasn't just assault. Samuel had built a case, documenting license plates, tracking behavior changes in the kids, recording who came and went. He even submitted evidence to child services, but no one moved. Because he wasn't a cop. He wasn't a parent. He was just a neighbor. The moment I got home, I laid the stack of articles on the kitchen table. Mom walked in, paused, and frowned. "What's all this?" "Read it," I said. She did. She read in silence, mouth tightening, hands beginning to shake. Halfway through the second article, her lips parted. By the fourth, she sat down. By the last one, she was crying. "Oh my God," she whispered. "We got it wrong. We got it so wrong." She looked at me, her voice hoarse. "That man, he went to prison trying to protect children, and we treated him like a monster." I nodded. "There's more," I said quietly. I showed her the page about Brian Givens, the connection to Dr. Monroe. They'd corresponded. Letters. Prison visits. Givens had called Monroe his successor. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. The man we'd trusted. The man who ran parenting workshops and offered free counseling. The man who hugged children at the community fair. He was Givens' student. That night, for the first time in my life, I saw my mother walk across the lawn and knock on Samuel Brooks' door. I watched from the window. He answered, and she handed him the printouts. They spoke for several minutes. She cried. He didn't. When she came back inside, her eyes were red. I asked what she said. "I apologized," she replied simply, and told him I was ashamed. What did he say? That he understood. That fear makes people do cruel things, and that he didn't blame us for wanting to protect our kids. It broke something in me to hear that. He didn't blame us, even after we'd blamed him for everything. It didn't take long for the neighborhood to fracture. Some people, like my mom, couldn't read the articles fast enough. Others refused to believe them. Mrs. Platt, who had led the safety watch with military precision, insisted the stories were fake. "Anyone can forge a newspaper article," she said, lips thin with denial. He probably planted them. But when Reverend Moss contacted his law enforcement friends in Portland and confirmed everything, even Mrs. Platt fell silent. 1 week later, Fairview police raided the house 2 doors down from ours, Dr. Calvin Monroe's house. They seized hard drives, photographs, envelopes. They uncovered letters written to and from Brian Givens, recordings, diaries, counseling logs that had been doctored to explain erratic child behavior. And worst of all, they found names. 12 children from our neighborhood. Jenny was one of them, the girl who'd gone to tutoring twice a week, the one who used to braid friendship bracelets on my porch. She stopped speaking for weeks after the raid. As the investigation unfolded, one thing became painfully clear. Someone had been watching Dr. Monroe, documenting, recording, building something airtight. That someone was Samuel Brooks. When Detective Kingsley stood in front of a crowd of reporters, she said what no one else had dared to. Mr. Brooks provided the foundational evidence that allowed us to pursue this case. He's been tracking Dr. Monroe for nearly 3 years. His files contain time-stamped photos, vehicle logs, audio transcripts, and surveillance data that filled in the gaps we couldn't reach. She held up a thick manila envelope the corner worn from use. He built a better case than we did. That night, I walked into Samuel's backyard as sirens wailed just down the street. He stood by his garden, arms folded, not triumphant, just still. "You knew," I said softly. "This whole time you knew." "I suspected," he replied, "from the day he moved in." "Why didn't you report him?" "I did, multiple times. But no one listens to the guy with a record when the predator wears a smile and a suit." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "So you just watched?" "I watched. I gathered. I waited. And I tried to make sure no one else got hurt while I did." His voice cracked slightly. "Do you know what it's like to see kids in danger and not be able to stop it? Not because you're wrong, but because no one will believe you." I didn't. Not then. But I do now. Over the following weeks, Fairview turned upside down. Neighbors who once crossed the street to avoid Samuel now brought pies and apology letters. He didn't turn anyone away, but he didn't ask for their forgiveness either. Mrs. Platt was the first to knock. "I ruined your life," she wept. "I made everyone fear you." He only said, "You were trying to protect your grandkids. I can't fault you for that." The city wanted to honor him, an award, a ceremony, a plaque. He declined. "I didn't do it for recognition," he told my mother. "I did it because kids deserve to be safe." 3 months later, a for sale sign appeared in his yard. He said it wasn't because of hate he'd had enough of that. It was because he'd finally found something he'd been searching for all along. Peace. The day he moved out, he left me a letter. "Lila, thank you for being brave enough to look for the truth when everyone else stopped trying. You asked questions that mattered. You trusted your eyes, not the noise. You reminded me that silence isn't always safety, and sometimes children see what grown-ups won't. Keep asking. Keep listening to your gut. Keep choosing curiosity over comfort. That's how change begins. Stay safe. Samuel P.S. I left something for you in the garden. Behind the sunflowers, I found a small metal box buried beneath the soil. Inside, a photo of Samuel in uniform, much younger, standing with a group of soldiers in front of a tan stone wall marked Afghanistan, 2009. And next to it, a brand new bike lock and a key. So you can ride without fear. Kids shouldn't have to worry about monsters, especially when the real ones don't always look like monsters at all. They tore down Dr. Monroe's house that spring. In its place, the city built a park. There's a small plaque beneath the swings that reads, "In memory of courage, for those who speak up when no one wants to listen." Now I'm 25, a social worker. I investigate abuse claims and listen to voices people dismiss. And every time I step into a case that no one wants, I think of Samuel Brooks, the man we feared, the man we judged, the man who saved us all.